It is the night of May 18th, 1536. Inside the Tower of London, the air is cold, the stones damp, and the torches flicker along the walls. Somewhere in that fortress, in a small chamber, sits Anne Boleyn, the Queen of England, former Queen of England. By tomorrow morning, she will lose more than just her crown. Imagine that. Just 3 years ago, she was at the very top, walking proudly through her coronation, jewels glittering, people cheering, and the king himself hopelessly in love. Now, she's pacing in a prison cell, probably thinking, "Wow, that escalated quickly." But here's what makes it different. She doesn't fall apart. The guards outside said she prayed, she smiled, even joked a little. Can you picture that? A woman about to face the sharp end of a sword, laughing softly like it's just another strange day at court. It takes courage, or maybe a touch of Tudor-level stubbornness. The tower itself was heavy with history that night. Its walls had seen traitors, rebels, and king's enemies. But Anne's case was unlike the others. She wasn't just any prisoner. She was once the most powerful woman in England, the reason a king had broken away from the Pope, the woman who turned the country upside down. And tomorrow, those same people would watch her fall, still, and carried herself with dignity. She thought of her little daughter, Elizabeth. That thought must have hurt the most, knowing she would never see her grow. Yet, she held her head high. So, on this quiet night, Anne Boleyn prepared for her final dawn. Tomorrow, history would mark her end. But tonight, in the tower, she was still a queen. Before she was the prisoner in the tower, Anne Boleyn was the star of the Tudor court. She wasn't your typical blonde princess type. Nope. And had dark eyes, quick wit, and this magnetic energy that made people turn their heads the moment she walked in. Some said she wasn't even the most beautiful woman at court, but charm? Oh, she had buckets of it. And grew up in Europe, learning French manners, stylish fashion, and how to hold her own in a room full of powerful people. By the time she came back to England, she was not just another lady-in-waiting. She was mysterious, modern, and different. And that's exactly why King Henry VIII noticed her. Now, here's where things get dramatic. Henry was already married to Catherine of Aragon. But Anne? She refused to be just another fling. She told the king, "Nope, not happening. If you want me, you'll have to make me queen." Bold move, right? Most people would have just taken the jewels and stayed quiet. But Anne played the long game. And guess what? It worked. Henry became obsessed. He wrote her love letters, showered her with gifts, and even started questioning his marriage. Soon, Henry's passion for Anne led to something unthinkable, breaking ties with the Pope in Rome. Yup, Anne Boleyn wasn't just a love story. She was the spark that lit a religious and political fire across England. Imagine the gossip at court. Whispers, jealous stares, Catherine's supporters fuming. But Anne kept her head high, showing off French fashion, witty remarks, and that confident smile. She wasn't just Henry's crush. She was a storm. A woman who could bend a king's will and shake a kingdom to its core. Anne's rise to power was fast, but her fall? Even faster. Once she was queen, things got messy. Remember Henry's obsession? Well, obsessions don't last forever, especially when the king starts eyeing other women, and gave Henry a daughter, the future Queen Elizabeth I, but no sons. And for a king obsessed with having a male heir, that was a huge deal breaker. The whispers at court grew louder. Maybe God doesn't approve of this marriage. Maybe it is cursed. Some even called her a witch, just because she was smart and confident. Typical, right? But enemies weren't just talking, they were plotting. Catherine of Aragon's supporters hated Anne. Courtiers who once cheered for her now turned their backs. And Henry himself? Let's just say his wandering eyes were already finding new interests, including Jane Seymour. Here's the kicker. Rumors started flying that Anne was cheating on the king. With who? Oh, just random men at court, even her own brother. Wild accusations with zero proof. But in Tudor England, proof wasn't really needed when the king wanted you gone. So, in 1536, the trap was set. Anne was arrested, accused of treason, adultery, and even plotting against Henry's life. Imagine the shock. One day she's the queen, the next day she's dragged to the Tower of London. And Henry? He acted like he barely even knew her. Cold, heartless, already planning his wedding to Jane Seymour while Anne sat in her prison cell. This was betrayal on the highest level. And the woman who once made a king change religion was now abandoned, surrounded by enemies, and left to face charges that would seal her fate. The Tower of London. Sounds fancy, right? But for Anne, it was no royal palace. It was basically the waiting room before execution. Cold stone walls, guards outside, and the sound of ravens. Not exactly cozy bedtime vibes. Anne knew her time was almost up. But here's the thing. She didn't break down like you'd expect. No screaming, no begging. Instead, she kept this weird mix of dignity and sharp wit. Like, she joked about how small her neck was, saying the executioner would have an easy job. Dark humor level, Tudor queen. On her last night, Anne prayed a lot. She thought about her daughter Elizabeth, the little princess who would grow up without a mother. Imagine the ache in her heart, knowing Elizabeth would face the same court politics that had destroyed her. Friends who were allowed to see and said she seemed strangely calm. One described her as smiling, even laughing at moments. Maybe it was nerves, maybe faith, maybe she just wanted to leave the world with her head held high, literally, for now. Meanwhile, Henry was busy celebrating his new freedom. He didn't waste a second. Plans were already in motion for his wedding to Jane Seymour. Talk about cold. His wife hadn't even faced the axe yet. Anne's last meal was simple, nothing royal. She didn't ask for feasts or wine, just prayers. She was ready to meet her fate, knowing she couldn't win against the king's will. So, as the tower bells rang that night, Anne lay awake, a queen without a crown, waiting for dawn, waiting for the blade. May 19, 1536. The morning air at the Tower of London was heavy, almost like the walls themselves knew what was about to happen. A small crowd gathered, nobles, soldiers, and some regular folks who just wanted to witness the Queen's fall. Tudor England loved drama, and was led out, dressed in a simple gown. No jewels, no crown, just grace. People expected a broken woman, maybe crying or angry. But nope, she walked steady, head high, almost like she was hosting her final royal event. That confidence? Legendary. Before kneeling at the scaffold, and gave a short speech. No trash-talking Henry, no drama. Instead, she said she prayed for the king and wished him well. Imagine that. The guy who sent her to the block, and she's asking God to bless him. Classy or sarcastic? You decide. Now, here's a twist. Henry had ordered a special French swordsman instead of the usual English axeman. Why? Well, swords were quicker and cleaner. Maybe even Henry felt a tiny bit guilty. Or maybe he just didn't want the crowd to see a messy job. And knelt, blindfolded, and whispered a prayer. The executioner waited for the perfect moment, and in one swift motion, it was over. The queen who had changed England forever, the mother of Elizabeth, was gone. The crowd stood silent. Even the gossipers had nothing to say. And just like that, Anne Boleyn became more than a queen. She became a legend. Henry? He didn't waste a moment. He was already planning his wedding with Jane Seymour the very next day. Yep. Cold. And lost her head, but centuries later, she still rules history. Not as a victim, but as the queen who dared to defy.